everybody? This is Brant, Vogt with Mindful Events. Excited for today. Have one of my best buds, one of the greatest coaches, one of the most intellectual people I know, one of the greatest stories I've ever heard. Mr. Ben Azadi, best-selling author, national speaker, social media influencer, coach, program leader. I mean, he does so much for so many people, and just excited to have him on the show. Ben, how you doing, bro?
Brant, love you, brother. Great to be here with you today.
Love you too, man. You have so much going on as always. You just released a book, didn't you? You want to tell everybody about that?
Yeah, just released a new book called Ketoflex. In this book, I talk about how to use ketosis and fasting, these ancient healing strategies that have been around forever, how to use it to reduce inflammation in the body and let your body heal. So it's 311 pages, and I go through my 4-pillar framework in achieving that status of reducing inflammation and feeling good.
That's awesome. And we're going to get into that here in a few minutes, those 4 pillars. But before we get into where you are right now, and as people start to hear you, as you guys start to hear Ben, you're going to hear how thorough he is, how well he communicates, and how knowledgeable he is in these topics we're about to discuss. But obviously, Ben, it wasn't always like that. Your story, your background is very different to where you are right now. So if you could touch maybe on some of the things you shared with me and I've learned from you over the years, whether it's what happened with you personally, being overweight, obese, maybe with relationships, and especially with what happened with your dad and his health journey.
Yeah, so I grew up here in Miami Beach, Florida. Parents divorced. My mom raised me. She worked 3 jobs. 2 of those jobs were at a Kentucky Fried Chicken, a fast food restaurant.
Wow.
So she would bring me home Kentucky Fried Chicken every single day, and I would eat that. Hung out with the wrong crowd, addicted to drugs, addicted to sugar, addicted to video games, and it really showed up with how I felt. I was obese physically, obese mentally, and I never really had any goals in life besides getting the highest score in a video game. And that showed when I was an adult. I transferred to my adulthood, 24 years old, back in 2008. I found myself being an obese man at 250 pounds, wanting to give up on life because I was depressed every day, going through a bad breakup, working at a dead-end job that was not inspiring. And I wanted to give up because I was tired of hurting. I was crying every single day. I needed to surround myself with friends just so I didn't think negative suicidal thoughts. I explored suicide several times, and every time I did, I would think about my mom, and it would stop me because I didn't want my mom to deal with that devastation of losing her son. So I knew I needed to figure things out, just didn't know where that was going to start. And that's where books entered my life. I started to read one book, which led to a second, a third, etc. I read books from authors like Jim Rohn and Dr. Wayne Dyer and Bob Proctor, these incredible people that I know you study, Brant. And it really just helped me, for the first time ever, take ownership and responsibility. And that word responsibility, that is your ability to respond to life. Up until that point, my ability to respond to life was poor. I was the victim. I was blaming my genetics. I was blaming my enabling family members. I was blaming my slow metabolism. Blame, victim, victim, victim. But the books actually helped me take ownership. And in that second that I said those words, I am responsible, I became the victor of my destiny, no longer the victim of my history. And I started to actually put my foot down, focus on my health. 9 months later, I transformed my health. I lost 80 pounds, went from 34% body fat down to 6% body fat, size 38 waist to size 30. So I finally carved out a physical 6-pack, which was important to me at that time. But the most important thing that I achieved was this mental 6-pack. I started to think better thoughts, and it really opened me up into the space of health and nutrition. Years after that, my dad had type 2 diabetes, which we know is a lifestyle disease, which is so common in the United States. 60% of Americans are diabetic or pre-diabetic. 3 out of 4 Americans are obese or overweight. So we have a big problem here. So my dad was one of those people. He was obese. He had type 2 diabetes, and he ended up suffering a massive stroke from the complications of his diabetes. And it left him paralyzed, left him with the inability to speak. And for 9 months, I visited him at the hospice, and every single week he looked worse. Eventually, he passed on. And that really raised a lot of questions for me, because at that point, I was treating health like a hobby. I loved what I was doing. I was doing personal training, but it wasn't really, I wasn't viewing it as a purpose, like my duty and responsibility and obligation to get this message out there. But then my dad passed, and it raised all these questions. And I came to the answers, and the answers are with the message that I speak all across the world. So I know that I could have saved my dad's life, that he would be here with me today if I would have just applied the principles that I teach. But I also know that I was given that mountain so I could show the world that the mountain can be moved. So that's the message that we give out to the world with Keto Kamp, that you give out to the world, Brant and Laz, with Mindful Events. And the world needs this message more than ever.
Wow. Amazing story, Ben, as always. To go back to that those suicidal thoughts, you were actually researching ways to end the current situation. Is that correct?
Yeah, I went on the internet several times looking for the quickest way to commit suicide so I experienced the least amount of pain. So yeah, I went on the internet several times. Then every time I did that, I thought about my mom. I thought about, I can't do this to her. Like if I did this to my mom, I didn't want her to go through that suffering. So it just kept reminding me not to go through with it, not to go through with it. And thank God I didn't.
And I bring that up because of the mental health status of the world. I believe everybody has mental health challenges, whether they realize it or not. It's just, where are they on the spectrum, number one, and what are they doing about it? Would you say that was rock bottom for you, that you started to shift out of that once you really kind of had that vision with you not being there around your mom?
Definitely rock bottom. And it was a period of months where I was rock bottom. I didn't know how to get out of rock bottom.
And you mentioned you started reading books, and I want to go into the topic that I heard you say for the first time is mental six pack. Was there somebody, was it a friend? How do you go from wanting to be number one in video games to taking up books? Because I know I never read books before, and it wasn't until somebody brought it to my attention this, hey, I can self-improve. So was there a particular moment, or was somebody hand you a book, or how'd you make that, your rock bottom, you're shifting on your way up or out, or however you like to label it? What was that moment?
Well, thank God I had two, and I still have these two best friends in my life, Ronald and his wife, Carla. They actually handed me a book, said, read this book. I think it'll help you. And that was kind of like the gateway to other books out there. And the reason, like you said, I never read in my life. I wanted to just play video games. How did I become obsessed with reading? The reason was because every time I picked up a book and read 1 page or 5 pages or 20 pages, I felt inspired and I felt empowered. And it actually helped me feel like I was in control of my life versus life controlling me. And I wanted more of that. And the most important thing that I got from those books still to this day is understanding that we could actually choose our thoughts, which is the greatest power that we have. And the average person is thinking 60,000 thoughts a day, typically negative thoughts. That was me. And I decided I'm going to choose better thoughts. If I'm the creator of my thoughts and I have the ability to choose my thoughts, why am I choosing bad thoughts? Why am I choosing thinking? And now I say, if your dreams, now I say, if your thinking is stinking, your dreams are shrinking, right? It could be your health dreams, your financial dreams. It could be any dreams, but the stinking thinking is the detriment of your results. So I understand that now, and books help me accomplish that.
Amazing. So here you are, you're shifting out, your physical body is showing the effects of your personal development. Your mental six pack has developed or is in development, and you were treating health as a hobby, and this was about your self transformation. But then all of a sudden, something happens to somebody very close to you, probably the closest to you outside of your mom, and now you have to take this that you learned and now apply it to the outside world and other people. And can you just show what happened to your dad? And speaking about victim mentality, you could have been, I coulda, shoulda, woulda, especially if a close family, if I would have known this earlier, I'm sure you had those thoughts. But then you shifted from something happened to your dad of not knowing the information maybe ahead of time to now you want to help 1 billion people. Can you share how that kind of transformed into what you're up to today?
Yeah, and I still have those thoughts, by the way, of I could have done this for my dad. I could have done that for my dad. So when we look out there into the world, we see that there's a lot of disease, there's a lot of obesity, there's a lot of unhealthy people out there. The stats are disgusting. I mean, you could just go on CDC and look at some of the stats. 1 out of 3 women are diagnosed with cancer. 1 out of 2 men are diagnosed with cancer. Diabetes, autoimmune disease, these are all on the rise. And and I started to research, I became really obsessed with research, and I started to understand how the human body works at the cellular level. And then I found the answers to these problems that people are dealing with unnecessarily, like my dad dealt with, my family had to deal with. So if somebody's going through something right now, whatever symptom it is, whether it's diabetes or cancer or obesity, those are the symptoms. They are a result of the problem. They are not necessarily the problem. The problem could be far removed from that. So what inspires me, Brant, is to help the person uncover that actual root cause problem and start working on removing that. And then the symptom goes away by default. So that's why I'm inspired to do that. I still study. I still feel like there's a lot more to learn, and the message needs to get out there even more so than what we're doing right now.
So with that note, why don't you step into your new book, and actually, before we get into that, let me create a bridge into that, because it's obvious that the personal development of who you were and the reading led to food being a part of your growth, right? Because food was obviously part of something that was setting you back, whether it was obesity or the soup. I bet the toxins in the food were leading to suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
Because obviously the foods that we eat can lead to how we think, and you're big on thinking. So can you link or just discuss how maybe people have relationships with food, subconscious relationships with food, and it could and how that's how your mom worked at Kentucky Fried Chicken, so that's all you knew. How did you break the relationship with food? And just maybe if you could just throw in a quick tip on how others can at least maybe not break the relationship, but notice the relationship with the food. How did you notice the relationships that you personally have with food?
It's a very important question. It's sneaky because it's a habit, right? Like all habits. So I used to have the habit of eating these Franken foods and eating them every 2 to 3 hours and looking into my refrigerator for the answers where the answers were not in my refrigerator. So I think getting clear on your highest values is important. Having a strong why. I believe reasons come before results. So getting really clear on your values. And then once you have a purpose in life, there's no need to fill a hole with food because that hole is being filled with your values. So getting clear on your values, number one. Number two, understanding the relationship between eating something, whether it's a snack or a meal, and then how you feel right after, right? I started to understand that, okay, if I had maybe fast food, if I had donuts, if I had ice cream, I don't feel so good afterwards. I'm not thinking clearly. My energy levels are in decline. I don't like that. But if I eat some clean food, some low carbohydrate food, some healthy protein and fat, I feel much better. I'm able to make better decisions and function better. So developing that relationship with what food does and how you feel right after was huge for me.
That's amazing. So I love that explanation. And as you said, it's the word you used was tricky, right?
Yeah.
I'll have to look back. Yeah, it's very tricky. But I think that's a great exercise, is really, because I know for years I never even, and I know most people don't pay. Okay, I'm going to eat this, and then I'm going to pay attention to how I feel. But then let me eat this and pay attention to how I feel afterwards. Okay, then I choose this. I mean, it sounds easier than it actually is.
Yeah.
But at least that's a great tip for awareness. Now, you've written several books in the past, and I've read them all. It's fantastic. And now you've launched the most comprehensive one that obviously that you've done to date. I mean, it's phenomenal. Ketoflex. Why don't you go right into Ketoflex, why you did Ketoflex, and what inspired you to do Ketoflex, and go right into those 4 pillars.
Thank you, Brant. Yeah, so the book took me over 2 years to write. It's finally out into the world. I really teach how to utilize ketosis and fasting and different fasting strategies to help your body heal. In the book, right in the beginning, I talk about the body is incredible. It's capable of healing. I say you are a masterpiece because you are a piece of the master, and you were designed to thrive. You were designed to live a long, healthy life, not to experience disease and symptoms like we see so commonly. It's common, but it's not normal. So there's 3 principles to healing the body. And I talk about this in the book. Number 1, identify interference. What is interfering with your body from healing? Number 2, work on removing the interference. And number 3, allow your body to heal. So that's what the book's all about. And we use ketosis, we use fasting, we use sleep. There's a chapter on sleep. There's a chapter on carnivore, on how to do that. And all roads lead to inflammation. As long as you could reduce inflammation in the body, your body is going to heal. So I have this 4-pillar framework where we teach in the book. The first pillar is adapt. We're teaching your body to get fat adapted versus sugar adapted. A lot of the people who are dealing with those diseases and symptoms that I spoke about, they're sugar burners, meaning their cells are stuck at burning glucose and sugar, which is a very toxic fuel source. I compare it to a Mack truck with all the smoke coming out of the exhaust pipe. The Mack truck is not healthy for the surrounding environment. Burning glucose is not healthy for your cellular environment. So we want to get fat adapted. We want to teach the cells to burn fat, which is a cleaner source of fuel, similar to a Tesla. That's the first pillar. I could do that with you in 14 to 21 days. Then we graduate to the fast pillar, which is intermittent fasting and intermittent fasting strategies. We know that's been around forever, and it's profound for healing the body, helping you think clearer, and just so many other benefits. And then we move into the third pillar, which is called phase, where we actually phase out all carbohydrates. We phase out all these what's called plant toxin and anti-nutrients for 30 days to heal the gut and reduce inflammation. We do something called carnivore. After that, it's about 60 days to complete that. After that, you've earned the badge to start keto flexing. And that's what I teach that's very different than what a lot of people teach when it comes to keto. Keto is not a diet. Keto is a metabolic process. And we want to use it as a tool, but not the only tool. So I love getting into ketosis, teaching your body to burn fat, but I don't think it's healthy to stay there long-term because our ancestors didn't do that either. So we want to actually have this metabolic freedom and flexibility to start going in and out, hence Ketoflex, which is exactly what our ancestors did. So that's what the book's about.
Amazing. I know you've had programs over the years where people can come and enter, an event that you're going to have, whether it's a challenge of some sort. I know you've had some in the past. What are a couple of scenarios that you've encountered through clients that maybe they thought they had no shot at transformation, and they're walking in one person, they're walking out somebody completely different? Why don't you share, one or two of those examples of somebody that's really blown you away, or even blown, the group away that we're all in attendance together?
Yeah, there's so many inspiring stories. One of them that comes to mind, Shannon, who's part of my Keto Kamp Academy. She was type 2 diabetic, using medication for her insulin, high blood pressure, very much overweight, and just 60 days after following the protocol. So she was actually she lost about 40 pounds, but also she was able to work with her doctor to get off of her insulin completely, which is incredible. Her body no longer needed it. She adapted to the lifestyle. So that's one example right there. And there's other examples, of course, of severe autoimmune disease and gut dysbiosis, and you're not even able to eat any foods because it flares you up. But once you reduce inflammation and continue reducing inflammation, now you can introduce foods and feel better. Another story, a type 1 diabetic, which is different than type 2. That's something that you're pretty much stuck with because you can't really reverse it. However, you could rely less on your medication, less on your insulin. So it improves your quality of life. So this gentleman, David, I actually wrote about him and Shannon in my book. David was taking insulin all throughout the day. He was very much overweight, type 1 diabetic. He applied the principles and now he relies less on insulin and he lost a lot of weight. So it just improves your quality of life when you follow these principles. That's
incredible. And I bet you there's way more, I'm sure.
There are way more. Yeah. And it's just so inspiring, Brant, because when you see somebody take action with this and then you hear them share about it, it just makes me want to study more and get it out there into the world. So it's a reciprocal type of inspiration.
Absolutely. Let's dive into the fasting pillar. There's a lot of, fasting is more spoken about than ever before. Thank God, right? There's, a lot more people are bringing up intermittent fasting in conversation. I hear so many people talking about it, trying it out. I like to go talk about two things. For our mindfulness community, we're always talking about how to get more mental clarity, how to change our thinking, how can we have mental transformation, focus. Why does fasting help our brains? Why does fasting help us think more clarity? Why do we feel excited sometimes we're fasting, where sometimes people associate fasting with, no energy? Why is that? And can you talk about that for a second?
I love fasting, and that's one of the many reasons why I love it. When you think about food, a lot of people they think that food gives them energy, food helps them focus, when in reality, it's a complete opposite. I mean, think about the last time you had a Thanksgiving meal. You didn't want to immediately go and get some work done, you wanted to go sit on your couch, right? When you had a big meal. Because when we eat food, it takes massive amounts of energy and resources and blood flow from the brain to digest that meal. And it takes about 14 to 18 hours just to process one meal. So if you're eating all the time, you're just overworking your digestive system, taking blood flow away from the brain to deal with that. When you practice fasting, all of a sudden now you have diverted all of those resources, all of that energy, all of that blood flow to the body, to the brain. Not only that, when you're in the fasted state, the body thinks, because we're hardwired for the old school, like our ancestors, the body thinks, oh crap, we're going through a famish. It doesn't know about Uber Eats. It doesn't know about your refrigerator. It doesn't know about the grocery store. It thinks we're going through a famish. We need to keep this body alert, focused, and energized to go out there into the wild and hunt and kill. So it activates what's called counter-regulatory hormones. It activates glucagon. It activates this sympathetic tone. And it's the body's literal way of pumping you full of energy. So you're focused, alert, and energized to go hunt. But you could use that for your day-to-day. You could use that for an interview. You could do a sales call. You could just do it to feel good. So that's how fasting could help you think clearer and actually feel better throughout your day.
That's amazing. Thank you. Great answer. And in addition, with respect to fasting, that Nobel Prize that came out about 5 years ago, Autophagy. When I first learned about that, it was kind of one of the first moments, because I had fasted prior to you and I meeting. My fasting greatly improved after you and I met, and I started one of your programs and read your books. But Autophagy was so awesome because finally a medical doctor, I believe, or you can be on the specifics of that. I think it was a Japanese, that it was finally in, I would say, the mainstream, and there was credibility around fasting, that now you can actually show, hey, look, Autophagy. And if you can relate that to, because, cancer is just, it sucks. And people get cancer and they're listening to their doctors. And so many just choose chemotherapy. And I have a friend of a family friend of mine that they're getting their final words from their doctors. And I'm trying to say, you actually have spoken with them, but we're trying to talk to them about these things. But then the doctors say no, or the nutritionist is saying no fasting. So, but when you fast and the cancer has no food to eat, really. So if you could just touch on those topics right there.
Yeah. And the 5-year survival rate for chemotherapy is actually less than 3%, right? Which is crazy. So we know that there's a problem with the standard of care. Fasting is one of the best ways to prevent cancer. And maybe if you have cancer, to actually help reverse it. But of course, you got to work with somebody. Einstein said, intellectuals solve problems, geniuses prevent them. So what we want to be is proactive here. So that's the best thing you can do. Fasting is one of the ways to do that. So to your point, Autophagy, which the Nobel Prize winner in 2016, one Japanese researcher, he won this award for his breakthrough research in this process called autophagy. And autophagy is a pathway that is turned on through fasting. And if you think about it, the reason this happens is because when you're not eating food energy, the body needs to get energy from somewhere. So you have this innate intelligence within your body that seeks out damaged cells, damaged proteins, damaged mitochondria, and the body uses that for energy first. That's what autophagy is. So the analogy that I always give, it's kind of like a refrigerator. When we open up a refrigerator, we see that there's groceries inside of the refrigerator that all have an expiration date on them. What would happen if we let all the groceries inside that refrigerator expire, but instead of throwing them into the trash, we just kind of push them towards the back of the fridge, buy fresh groceries, put them in front of the expired ones and close that door? It's going to be toxic. Disease is going to develop. Well, the body is very similar. We have 70 billion cells per day that need to be thrown out and recycled. And autophagy is that process to do so. That's why the conversation about cancer, Brant, that's why there's a world-renowned doctor out there. He's an oncologist from Boston College, Dr. Thomas Seyfried. In his book, he says, if you completed a 7-day water-only fast, you would reduce your risk of cancer by 95% because of this maximum autophagy effect. So that's one reason of many reasons why fasting can be so powerful for any disease out there.
That's incredible. Definitely loving the research that's becoming available now around fasting, where many years ago wasn't that available. On the context of mindset and really mindfulness, and this goes back to a dialogue you had some time ago when I was fasting around eating. I like to call it mindful eating. People are so on the go. You know, you mentioned fast food, cooking something up real quick, microwave. How important it is to eat mindfully, and is there, for example, chewing your food, right? Mindful chewing, I like to call it, versus on your phone, on social media, watching TV dinners, right? TV dinner around forever. How important is it for you to be present with your food, mindful with your food, chew slowly? If you could just touch on that.
Yeah, and I know you completed a longer fast as well, so kudos to you.
Thank you.
It's very important because when you are present, first of all, you experience gratitude because you're right there in the moment. You're grateful for that. Fasting, actually, I've noticed that fasting actually helps you feel more grateful for when you do eat food, right? Because you're disciplining yourself to be rewarded, if you will, and wait for that food instead of mindlessly eating all throughout the day. So when you slow down and chew your food, you're going to allow your body to start producing specific enzymes, digestive enzymes to help break down that food. You're going to help your digestive system out, and it's going to help you with your energy levels because you're going to help give assist to your digestive system so it's not being overworked, meaning when you eat too fast, you overwork the metabolism, the digestive system, and you actually could feel more tired after that meal. But when you sit down and chew your food frequently, this mindful eating that you're talking about, Brant, then you're able to actually assist that digestive system and break it down, assimilate those nutrients, and you're just going to feel better overall. So this mindful eating is important. A lot of people are eating on the go. Like you said, they're stressed, they're eating in a stressful state. And when you have cortisol up, it's going to be hard to digest that food and even assimilate even if you're eating a healthy meal, it'll be hard to assimilate all those nutrients when you're eating in a stressful state.
Wow. Love the answer. Makes sense. So keto sounds very positive. There's a lot of information coming out on keto. I'm sure you get, and people in your community get a handful of, let's say, backlash, for lack of better language. If you could just share maybe a couple of things on why keto makes sense or how keto makes sense, and if you could relate it to your book.
Yeah, when we look at our ancestors, every single one of our ancestors did keto. It's not new, it's just more nuanced. Their environment forced them into ketosis, but then they flexed out of it. That's why the book is called Ketoflex, In and Out of Ketosis. Keto gets a bad rap because so many people are teaching keto the wrong way. You could do keto and actually increase your inflammation and increase your risk of disease by eating these inflammatory fats, these unstable fats. So it's very important to understand clean keto and keto flexing versus dirty keto and long-term ketosis. Dirty keto and long-term ketosis is an issue. And I understand why keto gets a bad rap and backlash, to use your word, because of the educators out there that are teaching it the wrong way. They're teaching it as a weight loss diet, but the body does not lose weight to get healthy. The body gets healthy to lose weight. So let's focus on health. Let's use the keto as a tool to flex in and out. And our hormones and our metabolism and cells are still hardwired to do that because every single one of our ancestors did that. So that's what Ketoflex is about. And that's what I'm passionate about, teaching it to distinguish this way versus all the wrong ways that it's being taught.
Love it. Love it. So how can we find your book? How can we find you online? If somebody wanted to join one of your challenges, your programs, if you could just let us know, the viewers know, how can we get, a hold of some of your information?
The book can be found over at ketoflexbook.com, ketoflexbook.com. You can purchase it today. It's available on Kindle and paperback, soon on Audible. I have a free guide for your awesome mindful events audience, and that's going to be ketokampblueprint.com. Camp is spelled with a K, ketokampblueprint.com. It's just like aisle by aisle grocery shopping list of what you should eat versus what you shouldn't eat, whether you're doing keto or not. And if you want to learn more about my information, you could head to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/ketocamp. We have over 400 videos on there, and we release 2 to 3 brand new videos each week.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. It's always amazing interacting with you. I've always appreciated and acknowledged and noticed and observed your personal development demeanor. You mentioned gratitude. I know you have a gratitude list that you do every night. Maybe I'm sure more often than that. You're always showing. You look at your background. There's always books in the background. So Ben, what can you leave the audience with respect to mindset, mindfulness, mental health, personal growth, personal development, where they can Start right now, start today on just some little shifts, some little wins with respect to reading, learning, like you mentioned, researching, and improving all areas of their life, including nutrition, health, and food.
Yeah, like you said, little tweaks. I believe little tweaks lead to giant peaks. So just make some small steps today. It doesn't have to be big leaps and bounds. I'm a big believer in just 1% better each day, just a little bit better, just beat yesterday. Do a little bit better today than you did yesterday. Have better thoughts today than you did yesterday. One of my favorite quotes is, the chains of habits are too weak to be felt until they are too strong to be broken. That's good habits and bad habits. So we want to develop healthier habits. And it really starts with your environment, because if you do have a toxic environment like I did, it's going to be very difficult to do what you want to do. If you have people telling you that your new decisions and lifestyles are unhealthy, or they're going to harm you, or they're too risky, it's going to be very challenging. And here's the truth. When you change, you become a threat to everybody in your life who does not change. It points a mirror to what they're not doing. So just stay really clear on your highest values. Understand that nobody is living your life but you. Take small little steps each day. These small keys unlock big doors, and you'll get there eventually.
Brother, as always, I love you, man. You always bring so much value every time we interact, every time we talk, every time I hear you. You've already researched, right? Research new information. So you have new information, new quotes from books. It's just every time we hang out, I leave the room smarter than I walked in. And you do that for obviously for the world. And we really appreciate you. You're putting a lot of work and a lot of research, and you're changing lives. And however we can support you now and in the future, we're here to help, brother. I love you, bro. Talk to you soon on the next one.